Welcome to Train Time, a podcast from the Train Campaign. You'll hear from leaders around the country about different passenger rail projects, because we're convinced that passenger rail is the essential framework for efficient, sustainable transportation in the 21st century. Train Time is hosted by Karen Christensen, who founded the Train Campaign.
Pardon me, boys, is that the Chattanooga choo-choo?
Support for Train Time is provided by the Transportation for Massachusetts Coalition, which includes more than 100 organizations advocating for clean, equitable, smart transportation solutions. From sidewalks and bike lanes to intercity rail, T4MA is leading the conversation on how we can build a truly modern transportation system. Learn more at t4ma.org. Good morning, I'm Karen Christensen, host of Train Time and founder of the Train Campaign. Today I'm talking to someone who is a train rider, not a legislator or official like many of our other guests. Kevin Ellis came to my attention when a blog post he called The Embarrassment of Amtrak was widely circulated among those of us working on rail projects. Kevin is a political consultant who has counseled companies and nonprofits on strategy, public relations, and crisis management. We're fortunate to have him share his observations with us today. Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, Karen. How are you?
It's delightful to have you here, so to speak, from Vermont. Now, you are in.
I'm just outside of Montpelier, the state capital.
I see. Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And I'm in Western Massachusetts. Well, your blog post about the embarrassment of Amtrak was rather widely circulated, which is how I came across you. So can you tell us how you came to write that? I mean, you obviously have a blog, and what inspired you? And then I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, because you basically summed up a lot that other people have been talking about, and that's important now.
Sure. Well, it began, Vermont is far away from everything, right? So that's the greatness of living here, but it's also the difficulty. So whenever you have to go to New York to take care of an elderly parent, as I had to in that instance, you're always faced with fly, drive, or train. And it just struck me that all the choices are bad. You can fly and pay a lot of money and get stuck at LaGuardia or Kennedy Airport. You can drive, which is, really tough on your body, and the traffic is really unpredictable, obviously. And I love trains. I've always loved trains. And I don't go to Europe a lot, but the one time I did, two times that I did, I was just amazed by the train service. And, here in Montpelier, the state capital, a town of 8,000 people, we have an Amtrak stop right in town. Mm-hmm. And the ability to get on, and, the dream is, of course, to have a beautiful ride, do some work, and arrive refreshed is the dream of great train travel. But we continue to be enthralled to the automobile in this country, and therefore our investment in train service is really, really terrible.
So if someone is listening in another part of the country who doesn't know the Northeast, or if someone elsewhere in the world is listening to this, can you give us a bit of background on Vermont, its relationship to the big cities that are not, from a Western U.S. point of view, all that far away? But what is it like if you have to drive, say, to New York? I think that might be useful to know, and then we'll talk about some details of your actual train experience.
Sure. If you're going to drive to, say, New York City or Red Bank, New Jersey, where I grew up. It's a 6-hour drive, and that's if the traffic is good. And then you have to deal with all of the Interstate 95 corridor unpredictability. Once you hit, say, New Haven, Connecticut, after New Haven and between New Haven and New York, it is a completely unpredictable situation that can turn into a traffic nightmare in seconds. And so a 6-hour drive can turn into a 9-hour drive in a few minutes. And so when you live in Montpelier, the state capital of the state of Vermont, you're thinking, oh, I'll just get on Amtrak and do some work, read a book, and just enjoy the beautiful, beautiful scenery, as I go down. In fact, there are 2 Amtrak lines within shouting distance of me. One is in my town, and the other one is over on the other side of the state in Rutland, Vermont, which takes you down your direction, the Hudson River Valley.
Yes.
Which is a little faster. And if you're willing to drive the hour to Rutland and park your car, you can get to New York in 5 hours. So we have this weird luxury, but as you discover when you get on both trains, if you're going from, say, I don't know, somewhere in Europe, London to Paris, I don't know how long it takes, but it's fast.
Like an hour and a half or something.
Yeah, it's an hour and a half. You could be there for lunch.
Yeah.
And on the 2 trains that go to New York or DC, frankly, from Vermont, it is from Montpelier to New York City. It is an 8-hour train trip if there are no freight trains in front of you and if all works well. And then to Washington, D.C., it is an 12-hour ride. And so it just struck me that this is developed world stuff. I mean, this is just, and this isn't one of those things that was sort of revealed by the pandemic. I mean, this has been going on for generations. And I mean, we can get into the details of sort of my experience on the train, but this is a complete result of a lack of investment in train travel in favor of the automobile and trucking lobby. And it's really, I think, as simple as that. We've got to invest in these things. If I could be in New York in 3 hours from Montpelier, Vermont, I'd be going once a month. I'd be doing business meetings. I'd be visiting family. It's nigh impossible to do that.
And in the 21st century, in the richest country on the planet, it's a little odd that we have such, as you said, embarrassing train service.
It's embarrassing. It is really embarrassing when you can, in Japan or China. I mean, we're obviously in this politically polarized time right now where, the right wingers love to beat up on China, which, nobody likes to beat up on China more than me, but they've got train service that makes ours.
There is fabulous, and people focus on it. I do a lot of work in China and with China, and the attitude towards it. Just as an example, I went to Guangzhou, which is like the distance from New York to Chicago. It's a good long way.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's Washington, Chicago, actually. And I flew, but I was 4 hours late because flights there are delayed a lot. And my friend said, "Why didn't you take the train?" Yeah. And I hadn't even thought about looking for a train that distance. But the most popular, the most ridden route in the world is between Shanghai and Beijing. And it's packed and it's fast and it's just part of life now.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, just the list of, it's in my blog, but the list of issues is so long. I mean, the the food, for instance, is just terrible.
Oh, so tell us, to sort of start, where did you catch the train on this memorable day when you decided to record your experiences for the
Yeah.
historical record?
And mind you, I'm a huge fan of trains, and I'm a huge fan of Amtrak.
Yeah.
I don't want to beat up on the poor people of Amtrak. It's just that it's clear that they have uh, no money, no investment, and it's just, I think the whole thing is badly managed. I mean, you get
Yeah.
on in Montpelier, the state capital, a cute little train station. You know half the people waiting to get on the train. Uh, in Vermont, we all think we know each other because it's so small.
Yeah.
And you get on the station, and it's great. And then you realize that everything is wrong. The train is going 40 miles an hour. It is stopping at, every little hamlet to pick up one or two passengers.
Hmm.
The cafe car is open, and it's almost impossible to get any food that is even approaches healthy.
Hmm.
There, the person serving the food is, sort of underpaid, overworked, kind of angry, resentful of being there. They obviously have union issues.
What do you get to eat? What's on offer on an Amtrak train?
Oh, there's a everything is encased in plastic. There's a sticky bun in a plastic bag that they'll pop into a microwave. Um, there's a sandwich wrapped in plastic they'll pop into a microwave, and a cup of coffee in a styrofoam cup. Um, there's just
Sounds like the 70s.
yeah. No, it's exactly right. You feel like you're in about 1973 and nothing's changed. Now, the one good part of the trip was that the train car was fairly modern. The seats were, leather, and the seats were clean. They didn't have that disgusting sort of cloth seat cover where, that absorbed the sweat from every
Hmm.
passenger in front of you. Uh, and so the train cars, I mean, they can't hold a candle to train cars in any other country in the world, but these train cars were, by American standards, fairly new and
Hmm.
modern.
Hmm.
So that was a plus. But you're 6 hours into it and you hit New Haven, Connecticut, and I'm sorry that I can't remember. It's either New Haven or Hartford.
Hmm.
The other problem with this is, as you know, freight trains have priority.
They don't
So,
legally have priority, just so you
correct.
know.
Right.
They take
But
priority, but they don't actually um, merit it on the basis of the law.
there you go. And so you're forever sort of stopping on the tracks waiting for some freight train to go by you or unload its cargo or whatever. And then it's either Hartford or New Haven, I can't remember. You stop, you back up, you switch train engines, uh, and then you wait for 20 minutes, and then you're on your way again. And
Huh.
in both New Haven and Hartford, there's 20-minute delays where you have to make
Wow.
the crew changes, the engine changes, and I get it, but uh, all I can think of is the lost opportunity.
Hmm.
If you could be in New York in 3 hours from Vermont, or Washington D.C. in 4 or 5 hours, the economic benefits of all of that would be incalculable.
Yeah, and it would spread benefits throughout spread benefits from the urban regions to rural regions where many of us like to live, but still carry on professional jobs.
Oh, I might, and nothing has revealed that more than the pandemic. I mean, the ability now to work remotely and your employers or your clients' acceptance of the fact that it no longer matters where you are. I hammer my children who live in big cities. They live in DC, New York, and LA, and I'm always saying to them, it doesn't matter where you are anymore. So come visit for a long weekend.
Yeah.
I have a son who runs a podcast studio in New York City, and we're always saying, hey, pop up for the weekend. And he's saying, you want me to get on an 8-hour train?
Yeah.
To see
so it
you?
cuts
It's
people
impossible.
off. Yeah.
It cuts people off.
And of course, you're talking about trains, the advantage of trains for people working remotely or working in a hybrid way is that you can work on the train. I mean, that's a big selling point. How did you find it working on the Amtrak train?
Oh, terrible. I mean, terrible. And again, I say this with all affection for Amtrak and trains and the mountain they're trying to climb. The internet's terrible. It's really slow. You cannot do a business call. You're on the phone for 3 minutes and then it cuts out. Your email's incredibly slow. I mean, it's just, you finally give up and read a novel. I mean,
I'm actually I'm going to have a 9-hour Amtrak ride tomorrow to Pennsylvania to see some train cars.
Oh, wow.
And I've never taken an Amtrak train ride that long. And actually, I've been kind of putting together the work to do on the train, making sure I have a fair amount of paper and stuff I can do offline, because I assumed that might be the case.
Yeah, it is. It's 6 hours is one thing, or 5 hours that you can manage. But I'll tell you, when you get to about New Haven, and then you realize you've got 3 hours left of this just brutal train ride, you just begin to, I don't know, it's something about when you cross the 5-hour threshold, it suddenly you just get really.
I think with drives too. But was your train on time?
Oh, it's about half an hour late. But I'll tell you, you arrive, for non-New Yorkers, you used to arrive in the disgusting Penn Station train hub. They've now opened, as you probably know, the Moynihan train hall across the street in the old post office. And after this brutal train ride, you get out and you're in this absolutely gorgeous new train hall that is futuristic and wonderful, and it's got coffee shops and good food, and it's clean and wide open with beautiful sun coming in the windows, and you just feel renewed, and you say, oh my God, this is what is possible. Just a modern experience where you can work and be a human. And Amtrak is just so back in 1970, and I blame the politics. It's just and the tyranny of the automobile that has taken over society.
But I think what you're talking about there is really important, about having a vision for what it should be like, not in every detail, but we don't just want kind of clunky old trains. We want something that's compatible with a new modern station. Actually, the trains I'm going to see in Pennsylvania are battery powered electric trains that can be used on short lines. I'm hoping that they will prove suitable for our line in the Berkshires for a demo project. But they would be modern looking, and quiet. Yeah. So we're definitely thinking about that. I'm curious about, if you can tell us a little bit about what you think, how Vermonters feel about train service and being connected. Vermont's a state that punches above its weight nationally.
Yes.
And so I'm and it's it's a very green state in various ways. But what might we learn from the needs and interests and vision of Vermont?
Well, I think I think Vermont is fairly educated and yearns for the types of modern conveniences that are here and are coming with a mobile, remote, electrified society. We are the home of Bill McKibben on climate change, and our former governor Howard Dean was a huge train advocate.
Mm-hmm.
He actually put aside a bunch of money to start a commuter line between some towns and Burlington, the biggest city. That evaporated because when a Republican got elected, they did away with that funding.
Mm-hmm.
So Vermont leads in a lot of ways, and you can see the hope on the faces of all of us when we sort of board Amtrak at our train station. We realized, it took 6 minutes to get here in the car. Your spouse drops you off or whatever, and you're independent and you're working, and then as you just get into the trip, it just gets more and more depressing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's so tragic because the economic opportunity, the human opportunity to remake to rebuild into a post-pandemic successful economy is staring us right in the face, and we just won't seize the opportunity.
Well, let's hope that we can find ways to seize it. And I really appreciate your, I think to have that very specific example of what's wrong, but also a sense of the vision that we need to inculcate in those who are going to actually make the decisions is really important. I think it's hard for people to visualize what the future, a better future will look like. And so that's helpful.
You're right. It's very difficult to build the kind of political support for the dollars that need to be invested in a 3-hour train ride from Montpelier, Vermont to New York City. But boy, once it happens, it's kind of like the iPhone or that Moynihan train hall. I mean, once you present it to people, there's no going back. Once you present people with a really good alternative, there is no turning around. They will get on that train.
And that's modeled. There are plenty of very similar situations in the United States and I'd like to think that, there's some potential for, for efficiencies because we want to do the same kind of thing. So we need some good models. And that route is certainly an attractive one to think about. So thank you very much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have had a chance to meet you online. And, so at some point we'll maybe cross paths at Moynihan train station. Thanks very much, Kevin. Support for Train Time is provided by the Transportation for Massachusetts Coalition, which includes more than 100 organizations advocating for clean, equitable, smart transportation solutions. From sidewalks and bike lanes to intercity rail, T4MA is leading the conversation on how we can build a truly modern transportation system. Learn more at t4ma.org.
Thanks for joining us today. The Train Time podcast is brought to you by the Train Campaign, sharing a vision for passenger rail as the essential framework for efficient, sustainable transportation in the 21st century. Learn more at traincampaign.org.